Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So for our new people, we are in the 18th chapter, the final chapter of Gita, which is a recapitulation of the entire teaching. And it's done through the frame, the lens, as it were, of the three gunas. Gunas means the qualities of mind, and they are tamas, rajas, and sattva. Sattva is the principle of non-activity, of clarity, in which the nature of the self is crystal clear, and the nature of the world is revealed as the play of consciousness. Rajas means activity. There's ignorance covering the mind, and because of that, we're caught in the drama of ego. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, more, better, different. The deeply rooted belief is that I am unhappy because I don't have what I want. That's the essence of rajas. Tamas, I got him confused. Tamas is inactivity. Sattva is non-activity. Tamas, delusion, lethargy, depression. I'm unhappy, and so I want to go further unconscious. And in that state, I mistake everything, I have wrong discrimination, and I fall deeper and deeper into the mire of ignorance. So this is the frame that we're working with. Mark, do you remember where we are from last week?
Yeah, we're on Shloka 26, chapter 18, page 774.
Page 774, Shloka 26.
So we starting 26 or we finished 26?
No, we're starting on 26.
Okay.
Can you help us out?
Yeah. Mukta sango naham vadi Dhrutyusta sahama sahasamanvitaha siddhyash siddhayo nirvikara karta satvika uchatyate uchayate.
Uchate, I think it
Uchate.
probably is. It is said.
An agent who is free from attachment, non-egoistic, endowed with firmness and enthusiasm, and unaffected by success or failure is called sattvic.
Okay, so this is one of the subtlest teachings of Gita. I think several weeks ago, we went through the 5 elements of karma yoga. Act, O Arjuna, how, according to your inherent latent proclivities, your swadharma, in the yajna spirit, the spirit of sacrifice, renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action, and that 5th one, renouncing our identification with karta, the sense of agency. What is this sense of agency? It can be called karta. Yoga Sutra calls it asmita. Shankara will use the word ahankara a lot. It is a function in the vijnanamaya kosha, subtlest part of the intellect, where I coordinate all the sense perceptions and activities of a life. The body acts, the mind reacts, the intellect thinks, and it all happens to me. And I think that me to whom all this is happening to, I double toot. I think that me to whom all this is happening is who I really am. This is very subtle stuff. That karta is a function in the intellect. It's not who I am. I see it rise when I have thoughts like I do this, I do that, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. Sometimes, like when people are public speaking, they feel self-conscious. I was watching a video this afternoon of a master class given by Marilyn Horne, great opera singer. Many of you know I'm a retired singer. She's working with a young singer. And the poor gal was so nervous in the beginning. I mean, there you are trying to sing for one of the world's greatest singers ever. You know. And she was self-conscious. You could just see she was all nervous. This karta was very thick. It can thin. Athletes now use the term in the zone, where you don't feel like you're doing anything. It's just happening. So, Santosh, you were a dancer. When you were dancing and you were really in the zone, it was almost as if there was nobody there dancing, right? Yes, no?
No, there was no one there. It was just the thing happening.
Just taking place, yeah. Or if you're doing computer programming, you know, you're totally engaged in writing code. It's just happening. We have these experiences all the time when ego thins. It absolutely disappears in deep sleep. When the mind is all folded up into pure ignorance. There's no me there. There's no world there. So this karta thickens and it thins. Now listen carefully. If you can see it thicken when you're self-absorbed, self-obsessed, when you can go through those moments when it totally thins. So for example, Santosh, can you remember when you were totally in the zone dancing? Can you?
I remember the thing happening, but I don't remember someone doing the thing.
But you saw it, you saw that little self disappear and you saw it come back after.
Yes.
So how can it be you if you see it rise and fall? Do you see that? Let's see if I can give you an example. Can you see that there's a phone in my hand? Can you see there's no phone in my hand? You see the presence and the absence of the phone. You're not a phone. You're the one who sees it. Think. So, the person with the sattvic mind understands that this karta is just a function in the subtle intellect. Rises, falls, thickens, and it thins. My suffering happens when in the subtle intellect I attribute to myself the qualities of the karta. When I think I am the doer, as soon as I think I am the doer, then all of a sudden, if things go well, I think I am okay because things are successful. And if things don't go well, I go, oh, I screwed up. I me mine, I me mine, I me mine. So in the sattvic state, I know I'm not the body. I know I'm not the feelings. I know I'm not the thoughts. And I know that the doer is, Krishna says it in the 4th chapter, guna and karma. Meaning the qualities of mind and the force of the past as it interacts with society at large. In the end, if you pay attention, see, it's all incredibly mechanical. Swamiji used to thunder, the way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. So we stay in Sakshi Bhava, in the attitude of the uninvolved, unattached witness. Who am I? Chidananda Rupaham. I am the form of bliss consciousness. Chidakasha, the space of pure awareness. Ever the witness of all this stuff. See, detach. One of my favorite stories, I was at a camp and one of the participants came up to Swamiji and said, oh, Swamiji, when are you coming to Allahabad? And he says, I go nowhere. Allahabad passes in front of me. Always reminding us, I am not the doer. this. Any questions about this?
Jim,
So-
I have a question.
Please.
So it's about what you were talking about being in the zone. So one difficulty that I have is separating the feeling of being in the zone from the feeling of pure awareness. Let me give you an example. So for instance, there is something that I might like doing very much, like for instance, thinking about, some kind of mathematical problem or something. And it could, it can happen easily that I get lost in that, the sense of doership sort of goes away. And, like one of the other students was saying that the dance was happening and I was not doing it. But then the difficulty comes that at least I get very attached to this feeling of losing myself. And then even at times when I'm not supposed to be doing that. So for example, somebody is talking to me and I know that I should be listening to this person with my full attention. But instead, I find myself tuning out and going back to whatever it is that I wanted to think about.
Yes.
So I feel that it is not still sattva then, right? Because there is still some sort of desire there that is murking up the whole thing.
But you have to understand, when you're working the mathematical problem, yes, you are in sattva. When you're listening to the person, then you're aware of the attachment.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You see? It's when
Yes.
you're listening to the person that your mind is returning to the past, saying, oh, I wish I could be thinking about this math problem.
It's rather that it is actually tuning out the other person and thinking about the problem.
That's not sattva. That's not being present. That's rajas. Now, the problem is this, and we get a very clear discussion of this in Vivekachudamani when we talk about the Anandamaya Kosha. So those of you for whom this may be new or who may have forgotten it, we have Pancha Kosha, 5 koshas. Koshas means sheaths. They're like the layers of an onion, or like Russian nesting dolls. So the grossest sheath, Annamaya Kosha, Anna means cooked rice, the food tube. Then is the Pranamaya Kosha, the vital air sheath of energy body. Then Manomaya Kosha, the mental sheath, the emotional sheath. Then comes the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellectual sheath. That's the one we've been talking about. But the subtlest of all the sheaths is the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. And we need to understand the bliss sheath to be able to address what your doubt is, Shveta. So the Anandamaya Kosha for people in ignorance is experienced in 2 ways. First, whenever we satisfy a desire, and depending on the merits, the punya of previous lives, some of us, our lives are more blessed than others. Isn't it God has favorites? It's just we built up reserves in the cosmic bank of good karma, and life moves more easily for us. So where's my little prayer stone? So the technical thing of what happens, because of the force of my past, I decide what's pleasurable to me. So like Santosh here liked to dance. Do you like to dance, Vinayak?
Not so much.
Not so much. So obviously dance does not inherently have pleasure as its dharma. Otherwise, everybody would get pleasure from it. What do you like to do?
Like to run.
He likes to run. You like to run?
Yes.
Oh, that doesn't work then. Okay. I don't like to run, I'll tell you that. So if running had pleasure inherently, everybody would like to run. So the point I'm getting at is I decide, because of my past experiences, what I consider pleasurable. So technically what happens, the mind decides what is priya, what is dear to me. So we'll let the prayer stone be the widget. Whatever it is I think is going to make me happy. Then what do? I go do it. I buy it. I seduce it. I build it. I earn it. I do whatever I need to do to get proximate to my object of desire, that person, place, thing, or condition that I've decided is where the juice is. The mathematics problem. This is called moda. When desire and object of desire become one, when you're in the dance, or you're running, or your mind is fully engaged in a mathematical problem. Desire and object of desire have become one. That's called pramoda, the point of pleasure. Now, when the mind is in ignorance, I do not know that that's a taste of my own self-nature. Instead, I think it's the dance or the running or the math. Once I do that, then I develop an attachment, which means that at future time, my mind's going to return to that. The mind wants to return to the experience that's given it joy. That's its nature. We call this a mediated experience of my self-nature, the bliss of the self. The other place we experience the Anandamaya Kosha, does anybody remember?
Deep sleep.
Deep sleep. Yes, everybody enjoys the deep sleep. And there's no mind. The mind is all folded up. After the fact in the morning, I go, oh, I feel so good. I slept so soundly. I didn't move an inch the whole night. I feel so rested. So what a yogi wants to do is re-educate the mind so that we aren't dependent on what we call a mediated experience of pleasure, where we're dependent on a medium, people, places, things, and conditions. This is why it's so important to meditate. This is why it's important to practice our viveka and vairagya, this letting go, this detachment. So we begin to get, in the beginning, moments of deep peace, Shanti, in our meditation. Santosha, deep satisfaction, contentment. So the mind begins to have a non-mediated experience of the bliss of the self. And you watch your mind. You watch, what does it feel like when I want stuff I don't have? Yoga says that's the essence of our suffering. There is no other suffering. Watch your mind. Notice the ananda when you satisfy a desire. Yoga never says that the world doesn't have enjoyment in In the end, enjoyment is not problematic. Ignorance is problematic. So when you're out running and you get totally high and blissed, oh, that really stopped my mind. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Then what we begin to see, because there are many, many events where our minds will stop its karma, its craving, and we begin to own our ananda. You mean, Jim, that pleasure tastes the same, that ice cream and exercise and a math problem all do the same thing? Yes. The experience of pleasure will vary in intensity and duration, depending on how badly we wanted it and how completely it satisfies us. But the Brahmananda Rasa, the little juice, the bliss of Brahman that we get through the world is always finite and temporary. And that becomes the problem. Then I keep wanting to get back there. I want to get back there. So Shveta, this is why your mind returns to the math problem. The loss of ego when you're thinking about the math problem is not problematic. It's that you think it's the joy of deep intellectual pursuit. And then at another time, you want to go back there, which means you're no longer present.
Yes, I see that.
Did that make sense?
Yes. So
It
the
is
problem is attributing it to the pursuit.
the
But
pursuit.
if I'm able to touch that in an sort of so-called ordinary situation, then I will not feel the need to escape the ordinary situation.
And in the end, Krishna is smiling at us through every event. Let me give you a real live experience from my own sadhana. When I grew up, my mother hated housework. So housework was given to us kids as punishment. So if we were not behaving in some way, you have to do the dishes. And I grew up hating to do the dishes. And I saw that this was a klesha when I was in the ashram. So what was the yoga? First of all, don't avoid it. Move into it. Swamiji always said, put your mind where your hands are working. Jim, when you're doing the dishes, do nothing but the dishes. Focus on washing the plate. And then you find that washing dishes begins to reveal the bliss of Brahman. Once you see that the trick is this single pointedness of mind, taking a deep breath. Be full of bliss. Right now, I call it my evening choir of birds. They're out feeding by the lake, by my house. Can you guys hear them? I love to just get quiet. Listen to my choir. It's not Handel or Mozart. It's something so much more sublime and complicated. And it's just wonderful just listening to the bird calls. That was a crow. But are you catching the taste of this, Shweta?
Yes, Jim, I understand. I at the same time there remains one confusion in my mind.
Tell me.
So the question that comes, I mean, for something like birds chirping by the lake, even where I live, we have a lot of birds and it's very beautiful. I feel that it is easy enough for me to lose myself in that simple feeling of joy. But the things that I have difficulty with are, for example, conversations and things like that, where I feel that there is, for as an example, like a lot of emphasis on the business of life. For instance, what to eat for a particular meal. So in the extended family, in my particular cultural tradition, a lot of emphasis is placed on food. And I find, for this is just an example, that a lot of time will be spent on discussing what to cook, how to cook it, and so on and so forth, and I find myself getting very impatient. So these are the kinds of situations where I have trouble being present.
I
So
get
this
it.
is a, yeah.
I get it. Now, you know who's our great karma yogini who taught us how to stay present to this sort of thing? The Queen of England. Can you imagine all day, every day, having to listen to all sorts of people talking about all sorts of nonsense that's important to them? But she's the queen. She's got to smile and be present and be patient. I have no idea what her spirituality was, but my suspicion is she really had to learn to be present. Now, let me give you another example out of my own life. I was at a meeting the other day, and the person who sat down next to me reeked of alcohol. His breath was so bad, it would just like curl your hair. You could smell the alcohol coming out of his pores. Well, I suppose he sat next to me because he knew I was going to be perhaps the one person in the room that wasn't going to shun him. So this is the person the Lord brought me. Was it unpleasant? Yes. But can I be present to this discomfort, to this assault on the senses? And one of my favorite sayings is from St. Francis of Assisi. He said, wherever you go, preach the gospel, and if you must, use words. So my job, the way I decided to interpret it, was to sit there in meditation, letting that peace just flow out. Healing energy. Hopefully it will make a difference. But even if it doesn't, it allowed me not to be in a place of resistance and wanting to get away and stuff like that. That's a very uncomfortable way to be in the world. Now, over decades of sadhana, I don't have to think about this as a practice too frequently. I do not avoid aversion. But that's how I deal with it. Was that useful?
Yes, Jim, it's something for me to really think about, because I feel that a lot of my time is spent in wanting to get away from, conversations and things that I don't like. And I realize that this is not in keeping with yoga practice.
And always we talk about raga, and what's the other side of it? Dvesha. The yogi's mind is the same. Raga and dvesha. In attachment for things, we do pretty well. I can let go of being attached to this. I can let go of being attached to that. But frequently, really bugs us is our little petty annoyances, our aversions. We don't realize that that's another form of attachment. Excellent question, excellent work.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Anything else on this one, or can we move on? Next verse.
Ragi karma phala prepsur labdo himsatmako suchihi harsha shokha kanvitah karta rajasah parikritah. Passionate, desiring to gain the fruits of actions, greedy, harmful, impure, full of delight and grief. Such an agent is said to be rajasic.
Yes. So the rajasic person, first of all, because of spiritual ignorance, thinks I am the doer. And as soon as that happens, that's the avarana Shakti, the veiling power of ignorance. Subsequent to that is what we call Vikshepa Shakti, projecting power. The root is kshipati, which means like to throw or like hurl a spear. So the mind goes, psh. What does it project? This paradigm is taken from Yoga Vasishtha, but I love it. 3 fundamental ideas. First, Jiva Bhavana. I think I'm a person. Most specifically, I think I'm the body plus the personality. Simultaneously with that arises a goal. That goal only takes 2 forms. I either need to fix the world or I need to fix me. And the third element we call kartavya, literally meaning obligatory action. But for us yogis, it means I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, more, better, different. This need to have it different than it is. Those 3 ideas are the mind. Those 3 ideas are samsara. Those 3 ideas are the root of the karma chakra, the wheel of cause and effect. Those 3 ideas are the essence of my ignorance. So for the rajasic person, I think I'm a person. With that, I think I'm not enough or the world's not enough. When I go after the world, I start by flowers. Please give me what I want. When that doesn't work, I get out the baseball bat. Whack, 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 give me what I want. That doesn't work. I bring out the flowers again. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. The world is wrong, or I'm terrible, I'm the one who's wrong. I need to be taller or thinner or more talented, etc. Struggle, 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 struggle. This is the essence of the Rajasic agent. Greedy, acquisitive, jealous, envious, judgmental. Usually, I'm just a little bit better than most people. The worst piece of poop in the world. It's all pride, both sides. This is the essence of Rajas. Now, we get all the stimulation from Western culture that tells us the Rajasic view of the world is what it's all about. One who has the most cash and prizes wins. All yoga says is, how's that working out for you? There's the very famous fairy tale of the emperor's new clothes. You probably all remember it. These charlatans come to the capital city and they say that we have magic cloth that only wise people can see. They tell several people about it and they make gestures like they're showing people the cloth. And nobody wants to admit that they're not wise. So they keep saying, oh yes, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Finally, word gets to the emperor. He has the tailors come. And he too cannot see the cloth, but is unwilling to admit that he's not wise. He's the emperor's the king. So he has a suit of clothes made out of the magic cloth. Then he's in procession down the main street of the capital. And everybody says, oh, look at the king's new clothes. They're so beautiful. They're so wonderful. None of them willing to admit they can't see it. Finally, a child says, Mommy, look, the emperor is stark naked. So everyone around us says, more, better, different, more, better, different. I'm happy because I went skiing in Switzerland. I'm happy because I have a Tesla. I'm happy because I just bought $1 million house. I'm happy because I lost 20 pounds. I'm happy because I have a fancy suit to dress. Happy because I'm Jewish. And I tell you, they're like you and me. They go home at night and they ask, why isn't this working? And then their minds say, maybe I need more ski trips. Maybe I need to live in a different place. Maybe I need a different car. Maybe I need a different husband or wife. But they don't want to admit that it isn't working. And the way I like to frame it is we compare our insides to other people's outsides. And believe me, they are more than happy to tell you about their stuff. But you're sensitive people. Look into their eyes. One of the favorite things I like to do, look at a photo of Donald Trump. Look clearly and objectively at his face. And then look at a photo of Ramana Maharshi. And you tell me who has what you want. But it can take us lifetimes as a Rajasic Karta to figure this out. Any thoughts on this?
So Jim, in the analogy to the emperor's new clothes, you're saying that the yogi is like the little child, where everyone else is talking about something that they don't really genuinely see, but the yogi points out that in fact this happiness.
Exactly. Yes, you've got it.
Okay.
One of the things the Master Jesus said, suffer little children to come unto me, which means allow little children to come unto me, for of them is the kingdom of heaven. It doesn't mean everybody should be playing hopscotch. It means have that carefree innocence. Regain a childlike sense of play, of always knowing that we're taken care of. Moving through the world without so much paranoid self-observation. How am I doing? Am I okay? What do they think of me? Such a painful place to be. Next verse.
Ayukta prakrutah stabdah sacho neskripto lashah vishadi digra sutri chakarta tamas uchyate. Unsteady, vulgar, unbending, cheating, malicious, lazy, despondent, and procrastinating. Such an agent is said to be tamasic.
So the tamasic person has become so self-centered that all sense of real humanity, of real ethical values has fled. When I was teaching down at Cal State Hayward, we're going back now 20 some years. One of the things that disappointed me incredibly, now granted I was teaching general education classes, Do they have those where you are Shveta, things that are required for the undergraduates to take in order to get their degree?
No. I mean, in every discipline, there are some core courses, but there's no general education that I know of.
So you had to take mathematics, you had to take some history, you had to take a science class, you had to take some liberal arts classes to get a well-rounded liberal arts education. Then in whatever your major was, you had core classes and things that you had. That's, at that time, was the American educational system. So frequently, when I would be teaching like a music history class, there were kids who were there because they had to be there. They weren't particularly interested in it that much. They just needed to check the box for their humanities, liberal arts courses to graduate. And I would see that the ethics had shifted tremendously from when I was in school in the 60s. Kids would cheat in the 60s. There's always kids who cheat in college. But back then it was largely fear, I think. But what I found at Cal State Hayward is that there were kids who would cheat because they had the idea, which was given to them by American culture. Everybody cheats and smart people don't get caught. So the idea of honesty, of integrity, had fled from these kids' minds. Where they picked it up, if it was in their families at home or through school growing up in the public education system, but it made me incredibly disappointed. And they didn't think there was anything wrong with cheating. And then, you know, you look at American culture way back in 2008 when we had the economic collapse with the bundled junk mortgages. And what was the movie, The Big Short? Was that the name of it? Yeah. Fascinating movie where these people on Wall Street had no sense that what they were doing was ruining people's lives. They didn't care. They didn't care. This is Thomas. One of the more subtle forms of Thomas is those people who approach life with a complete sense of victimhood. My life is terrible, everything is bad, and it's always somebody else's fault. There's no chance of happiness or freedom as long as we move through life with a victim mentality. It's always bad luck that I got caught and thrown in jail. Over and over again, we see that. So this is Thomas. And one of the marks of Thomas is the desire for revenge, to hurt people, violence. It becomes the cause of many, many of the ills of society. One of the great philosophical questions is, how could a God allow such terrible things to happen? And if we understand the idea of the tamasic mind, the tamasic sense of agency, we begin to see that God really doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. We are not punished for our sins. Iniquity in the world is not a punishment for past sins, but we are punished by our sins. The Hebrew scripture says, "He that lives by the sword shall die by the sword." So the vast majority of humanity is caught up in violence, fighting, wanting my way, defeat the enemy, with no sense of perhaps integrity, justice, all these things the yogi wants to endeavor to embody. So the vast majority of the ills of the human race of our own making. People are dying in Ukraine. Tens of thousands of people have died. God isn't doing it. People are doing it. Why are they doing it? Because of tamasic minds. Later, it gets into indolence, lethargy, depression. In the Christian tradition, we have what we call the 7 deadly sins. They're not in the Bible. They were compiled by a fellow named Evagrios the Solitary, who was a Greek monk who lived in Turkey, what's now Turkey, in Asia Minor at the time. And he wrote in Greek. It's in the 5th century, the 400s. And one of the 7 deadly sins is sloth. So many of us think, oh, that's laziness. There's something wrong with me. I just can't get out of bed. The scripture implies the tamasic nature of that. But Evagrios breaks it down, and he calls it a combination of discouragement and disappointment. This is what causes us to be caught in sloth. We confront failure a lot, and then we just quit trying. So these are the elements that can feed into a tamasic sense of agency. Now, yoga says, if the mind is predominantly tamasic, no blame. But you can't take the mind directly from tamas to sattva. This is a secret in yoga. You stimulate the mind through rajas. So if you're depressed and shut down and you can't do the dishes, can't clean your house, you know, the old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. That's okay. Move the mind from tamas into rajas. Or if you're shut down and depressed, take one small action, like clean out a drawer, or just fold the laundry. You'll find you'll feel better just doing an action. And if you can, best way to move the mind out of tamas, seva. Seva means service, selfless service. It almost doesn't matter what your stupid problem is. Go help another person. You'll find that you feel better. Move the mind from tamas into rajas, eventually through sadhana from rajas into sattva. Next verse.
Buddhirbhedam dhritaschaiva gunatistrividham shruno rochyamanam sheshana prathaktvena dhananjaya. Hear you the threefold division of understanding and fortitude made according to the qualities, as I declare them fully and severally, O Dhananjaya.
Okay, so now, what were the two? Fortitude, and the first one was
Division of understanding and fortitude.
understanding and fortitude. Let's see what he has to say about it. Okay, next verse.
Pravittima cha nivrittam cha karyakare bhayabhay bandham moksham cha yaveti buddhiha sapartha satviki. That which knows the paths of work and renunciation, what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, fear and fearlessness, bondage and liberation, that understanding is sattvic, O Parth.
So this idea of buddhi, meaning a clear understanding in the intellect. It's interesting. So the word for having a sattvic intellect can be said to have bodhi sattva. Buddhism, we have this term, the bodhisattva, sattva. And it's the same kind of idea, the person with sattvic understanding. So now let's break down the elements of what is the quality of mind of the person with a sattvic understanding. What was the first idea?
That which knows the paths of work and renunciation.
So, what is it we're supposed to give up? What is it we're supposed to do? So, the root of this, what is action and what is actionlessness? The equipment is always acting. The self is never acting. It's always just the witness. But bringing it down to the level of what we call vyavahara, our transactions in the world. What is it we're supposed to do? What is it we're supposed to be giving up? We're supposed to do our niyatam karmas, our duty, stuff that comes to us because of the job we have in life. You might want to take a look at letting go of drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And I mean that metaphorically. The extroversions of the mind into things stimulate desire and make us go unconscious. Now, one of the things I find very interesting, for some reason in the past, say 5-6 years, many of my students are young people, 20 and 30 something. I have some people who are older. There's a lot in the 20s and 30s. Now, when I was that age, I'm an old hippie. I moved to San Francisco and dropped acid in Golden Gate Park. That was my generation. And I now see a lot of young people who have these same two influences going on in their lives. Something in them is yearning for God. Frequently, when they do drugs, they think this is going to take them to a spiritual experience. But they also are very extroverted into the world. Very extroverted into the hookups. Very extroverted into the drug culture, drinking, going out and partying. Well, everybody does it. We all go out on Friday after work. We work hard, Jim. We're just blowing off steam. No problem. But what I say to them is, go out and enjoy yourself until it quits working. Then come and study. Because there's nothing more painful than a head full of Vedanta and a heart full of desire. Try to do a bit of renunciation, you just can't do it. We come up with all sorts of rationalizations. Oh, I'm doing red tantra, Jim. Okay. Swamiji used to say, go after the world. Let it drop you. Again and again, we develop mature vairagya. We're getting kicked around by the world. Very clear what it can give us, what it can't. In Viveka Chudamani, in the section before the qualifications of a fit student, Shankara says that person who has a knowledge of the world outside and an understanding of the world inside, which means they've gone out and experienced the world. And they have some understanding of their own psychological material. If you have a difficult time staying in a relationship, so many young people Oh, I want a partner so badly, and I just can't seem to get a relationship that works out. Be value to find out why. Frequently, it isn't because you keep choosing the wrong fella, the wrong woman. Something in us. Something in us. So knowledge, right knowledge, having a clear understanding. We'll go back and revisit this shloka again next week because it's 8 o'clock and we have to stop. What's the number of this shloka?
28.
We'll do 28 again.
29.
29. We'll do 29 and go and finish the rest of the pieces of it next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.